Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Jacqueline and today I have a very special guest, my mother Rebecca. Can you tell us a little bit about your background before we begin?
Hi everyone. I am a pediatric physical therapist, and part of my job is working in school systems, and I have been on the other side of multiple IEP meetings. And if you don't know what that is, it's an individual education plan meetings, and I've also worked in a 504 meetings. So before I was a parent asking for one of these meetings for my child, I have worked in them.
Before we begin, you should probably know two things about me. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 9 years old and dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability, when I was 14. And today's video topic is going to be like a little Q&A, question and answer with my mother about what it's like raising a daughter with learning disabilities. By the way, if you see us looking this way, it's because we have a laptop set up, so our eyes just might glance over there. The very first question I have for you is, what made you think that there was an underlying issue causing me to have challenges in school?
My first recollection is that in the first grade, you were sent to the office multiple times for having meltdowns, like temper tantrums in school, which was unlike her at home at the time. When she was in second grade, Jacqueline was pulled out for specialized reading instruction. After a while, they actually called it RTI, which is called Response to Intervention. I don't know if that's true in every single state, but in this state, it should last between 6 and 12 weeks, and Jacqueline ended up being in RTI for over 2 years.
Yeah, that's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like they should have known by then, after a year at least, that this was not really going our way. But no, it took 2 whole years, people. Also, can you tell the viewers what state we live in?
We live in the state of Maine.
Awesome. So you're aware, if we talk about our state, it's going to be the state of Maine. And yeah, we're really not versed in other states, but it very might well be the same exact thing. Can you explain the process of finding out that I had learning disabilities?
So in the second grade, I requested that Jacqueline be tested by the school. In the school system, she was tested by a school psychologist, so it was called a psychoeducational evaluation. In that test, they do an IQ test, and Jacqueline's IQ is normal, as many children with learning disabilities have normal IQs.
Really good to put that in.
They also went over her academics, and at that time they felt that she did not qualify for an IEP. After the IEP, her reading teacher, specialized reading teacher, came up to me privately and said that while Jacqueline's scores were average for a second grader, the norms for a third grader were much higher, and that she expected that Jacqueline would qualify at grade 3. So I could have, 1 year after having her evaluated in the second grade, I could have had her evaluated in the third grade. But by that time, I jumped ship and went to a private neuropsychologist and had her tested. That neuropsychologist showed that she had multiple areas of deficits, and I took the neuropsychology evaluation to the school, handed it to them, and demanded that she be put on an IEP. They did not have a choice at that point.
It definitely pays off to be very strong-willed and just explain to them, my daughter's having issues and you need to listen, because for such a long time they really just brushed all these really blaring issues aside and was blaming it on other things, especially anxiety, which was previously diagnosed at that time when they said that I just had anxiety and that's all. But yeah, there was obvious signs, and I walked away from my neuropsychologist with dyslexia diagnosed. All right, can you explain the impact that it had on you when you found out that I did indeed have learning disabilities?
So when I sat in the office of the neuropsychologist along with my husband and listened to the results of the testing, I was heartbroken and I cried. But it really gave me a better understanding of what was happening with Jacqueline, and after I was able to process the areas of difficulties that she had, I felt like I was more empowered to provide her with the help that she needed at home and at school.
Yeah, I said in my previous video, I think the last video, getting your diagnosis is not the door shutting on you, it's actually the door opening on you, because now you have this world of explanation of why you do struggle a little bit differently than other people. Just like as a student, as a parent, you have so many resources that are now at your fingertips that hopefully you can tie into your own life to see if they can help you out, and they definitely did. I feel like a lot of people focus on the really hard parts of parenting a child with learning disabilities, or like you yourself having learning disabilities, which is so true, but there's also some highs. So what are the highs about parenting a child with a learning disability?
So there's a lot of highs about working or having a child with a learning disability. You just have to know where to find them. So I celebrate every time I see a light bulb go off in Jacqueline's brain or mind.
Yeah, no,
So
that's
for
true.
example, fractions are very hard for her. So if we're doing cooking and it requires 3/4 of a cup of flour and she can't find a 3/4 of a cup measuring cup, she can now figure out that 3/4 of a cup is 1/4 of a cup 3 times.
Yeah, it
And
took a while.
That
for me
took a
to learn
long time
that
to
one,
understand. You know, backtracking that we know she has a math learning disability now.
Mhm.
Knowing correct change, thinking back to when Jacqueline couldn't even tell me what a quarter was, or how much that was, or what did 2/4 equal. And now, before she started a job at an ice cream shop, we went over change, and also she had private tutoring at that time, and they went
Yeah.
over change. And
That
so
was really a big game changer for me.
yes. So then right before her job, we went over making change, and she was able to do that, which was huge.
Yeah, so now I can do it. I think I definitely remember the first time I gave correct change to customers, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did you guys see me? Did you guys see me? I just killed that. And I think, honestly, I might have been 15 or 16 years old, so it took a very long time.
Time is very hard for Jacqueline, and duration of time. So, now if I say to her, you need to be ready in a half an hour, and then I'll say, what time is it? And she'll tell me the time, and I'll say, what time do you need to be done or ready? And she's able to tell me that. And for years, she could not do that.
So true.
Those are, might be things that you take for granted, at least with your other children. But with a child with learning disabilities, those are the highs.
Mm-hmm. What would you tell other parents who have a child struggling in school?
So I'm going to answer this question based on Jacqueline having the diagnosis of dyslexia, which is where we started this whole process at age 9. Again, we didn't know, I suspected, but we didn't get a formal diagnosis of a math disability until age 14. So as far as talking about dyslexia, what I want to say first to parents is that you might find your child is doing everything they can to hold it together during the school day, and they might act fine at school and then come home and just have a meltdown. It's very hard to pretend that everything is okay at school and try to fit in with your peers and do the work that's expected of you, and then come home and it's not okay. So just know that as a parent, you have to be, you've got to give a lot of love to your child. And if they need to have a temper tantrum, let them have it and acknowledge that school is hard. As far as work goes, I had to lower my expectations of what I thought Jacqueline could do in a single afternoon for homework. So if the expectation of the school is that they do 1 hour of homework a day, which was what our school was telling us, for example, if Jacqueline was supposed to read 15 pages out of a textbook and we only got through 5, that's okay. So some of the strategies would be Jacqueline would read by herself, then I would read to her, or sometimes she would use an audiobook, but it's still, even if she's not reading herself out loud or to herself, following what I'm reading or following what an audiobook is reading is still homework. And
Absolutely.
so that is something that's very helpful to know as a parent.
Next question for you is, what recommendations do you have for parents who think their child might have a learning disability?
My number one recommendation is to be a very pushy parent.
Woo!
There is that statement that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And that is absolutely true. So if you're not getting the answer from the school that you want, there are ways around it, and you just keep coming back to it. So one of the things that schools like is data. That's the new buzzword these days. So you need to come to the table with data. For example, it takes my child 25 minutes to read one page. That's data. Or my child knows how to spell a word for a spelling test, and the very next day does not know how to spell that word anymore.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Yeah.
Also, for like reading assignments, sometimes a child can read the word correct on one page, so on the next page it's like a brand new word for them. They have no idea how to say it. So
yeah, that's true. That's a sign of dyslexia.
For sure.
Another, as far as math goes, what I noticed, which could be brought as data, is that Jacqueline would learn division 1 year, like whatever grade that was, maybe it was 4th grade, and then she'd come back to division in 5th grade. So they do a review, and then they move on to new learning. And Jacqueline absolutely had no idea how to do division. Like from step 1, it had to be reintroduced all over again. And that was consistent year after year. Fractions, same thing. So if they're not retaining previously learned material, that is a big red flag. Big one.
Yeah.
If you are in an IEP meeting and you absolutely are convinced that your child has a learning disability and your school is not buying it, hire a parent advocate. It is worth every penny. Schools take much more notice if you have a third party involved, and that parent advocate will fight for your rights.
Do you want to like explain a little bit what a parent advocate does, or like how do they get the qualification of being a parent advocate? Do you even know?
Yeah, I'm not sure how. Some parent advocates are self-taught. They are parents like me, who have sat in a lot of IEP meetings and feel that they are well versed in IEPs, and so that they can be part of a team of another family. Others are hired by legal firms or trained by legal firms, or you can even have a lawyer. A lawyer could be a parent advocate, but their job is to go through the IEP process step by step with you in the meeting, and if the answers coming from the school are not satisfactory to the parent advocate, i.e. representing you, then they will ask the correct questions and the school will have to respond. And I think this is very important for families who are not familiar with the IEP process. Again, I'm very well versed in that, but other families I know are not. And so if you feel like you're not getting the help you need for your child, then I would hire a parent advocate.
We've talked about IEPs a little bit, but can you explain how you go about getting an IEP for your child if you suspect they might have a learning disability?
So this is a very loaded question, and I will answer to the best of my abilities, but I'm sure in every state it's different. So you as a parent have the right to request that your child be tested by the school, or a teacher can make the recommendation as well. In a school, you will be tested by a school psychologist who will do standardized testing to show that a child may or may not have areas of disability. In addition, a teacher will have to do a classroom observation to show that a child is having difficulties compared to their fellow students in the classroom. So the results of those tests will guide whether or not a child can be diagnosed with something for an IEP. So some of the diagnoses, not necessarily medical diagnoses, but you could have a reading disability, or a math disability, or a communication disability. Other ones are other health impairments, autism, things like that. If you go through that and you are still not satisfied, you can go outside the school system on your own, which will cost you money, to be tested by a neuropsychologist. And that is much more thorough testing, and probably many more batteries of tests. So the school might do a small battery of tests, whereas a neuropsychologist will do a large battery of tests. And so they are able to tease out much more precise where learning disabilities are, or something that the overall general school testing missed. The neuropsychologist will be able to pick up.
For sure. And I was just going to say, we did that, of course, we did that for my dyslexia being diagnosed. We also did that for my dyscalculia being diagnosed. So just bringing that out there, they can do all sorts of learning disabilities, and it's really awesome how thorough they are.
The other thing that can happen is maybe the data doesn't support that your child has a learning disability, but does have some difficulties in the learning environment. And your child could be put on a 504 plan.
Yes.
So just to explain, a 504 plan is that your child can have accommodations in the classroom. So accommodations is not specially designed instruction. They won't be pulled out for instruction in math or reading, but they may have the accommodation of having extra time or taking tests in a different location because it's too noisy, or that they I believe they could have reading assistance with an audiobook could be an accommodation.
I'm about to ask a question, and it's going to have the keyword neurotypical versus neurodiverse, so let's go through that real quickly. Neurodiversity means your brain is physically wired differently than other students or other people, and usually that is with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, OCD, all of that. For neurotypical, that means people who do not have their brain that is wired differently than other people. So my question for you is, you pulled me out of all state testing because they measured neurotypical children against neurotypical children. There was no neurodiversity mixed in that. Would you suggest other parents do the same exact thing that you did?
I would. If your child is diagnosed with a learning disability, there is no reason for you to do state testing that compares your child to what the standards are for children who do not have learning disabilities. Yeah. First of all, it stresses your child out.
So much. I can totally attest to that. Yes.
And it stresses me out because I would read the reports and it would just confirm that Jacqueline was well behind her peers. That was not helpful. So when a child is in special education, they have to do standardized testing and they have key data points. So for example, your child will qualify based on standardized testing, and they will have goals made that will address those key areas of deficits, and you will get progress reports to tell you how you're doing. You'll have annual reviews to tell them how Jacqueline was doing, and then every 3 years your child will be retested, preferably with the same tests that they had, but if they've aged out of a test they already had, they'll be tested with new tests. But it would still compare like reading comprehension to reading comprehension. So you want to compare your child from point A to point B to show that they have made progress. Sure. I don't need to know how she is doing compared to other students because that doesn't matter. I just need to know that Jacqueline was making progress on her own. Now, having said that, I don't know if all states allow you to opt out of state testing. And I will tell you that schools don't prefer that you do that because state testing helps give them a data point for themselves on how they're doing. It also ranks the schools on who gets the best scores and who does not. And I could be wrong, but I think some of the funding for the schools has to do with state testing. So just be a pushy parent, and if you have the option of opting out your child out of state testing, I would absolutely do that.
One last question, which is, do you have any last minute advice that you give to other parents or even students who are watching this?
My number one piece of advice for parents is that you have to be the number one cheerleader for your child because they are working very, very hard to fit in, and you have to celebrate all the highs and even listen to them if they're having lows, but be their cheerleader. And what I would say to kids if they're watching, if they don't have that support at home, please find a teacher who can be your cheerleader. Explain to them what's going on. It might even be a guidance counselor, but there are people who are on your side who can be that cheerleader for you. And anyone watching this, they needs to know that someone needs to be a cheerleader.
And we're also cheerleaders for you if you're going through the process of getting an IEP, or if you're struggling right now, we have got you from the other side of your screen. Well, everyone, this concludes today's video. Again, I just want to thank my mom for coming on. This is her very first appearance on social media. at least for YouTube. She's been on some of my TikTok videos. But yeah, I just thank you so much for your insight. I think it's going to be super helpful for teachers or any other educator, definitely for parents and even students watching this. It's just really hard having a learning disability, but just know that you've got this, and there's a lot of resources online that you can go to if you need a little bit of extra help. Speaking of one of those resources, I do have a website called mindslikemine.com. I say a little bit of my own story on there if you would like to see that. And I have a TikTok account called Jacqueline_Elise. I'll put that on the screen. If you are someone who would like to connect with us, I also have an email that I'll put right on the screen, and we are so happy to answer any questions from a parent point of view or a student point of view. Yeah, so I hope to see you on the next video, and maybe, of course, there's no maybe, you're definitely going to be coming back at some point soon, so stick around for that. Bye, everyone!